My name's Russell Spatz. I'm an alcoholic. And haven't found necessary to have a drink, nor have I since January 25th, 1981. Right. So it's good to be here with you guys. I've been doing this every year for the last 40 years or something like that. And it's good to be here. I love this group. It's a good group. It's changed a little. Yeah, I got a few older guys here, and it's good to see you. So you've had a little fun, huh? It hasn't been that bad, has it? You guys like the Alky dog? You like the $10 cruise? I'm out of jokes. It's time to get serious. We're on step 3. So I was telling Sheldon, he says, so what are you going to talk about tonight? Step 6, step 9, step 10. I said, I'm going to talk about step 3. He says, you're going to talk about step 3? He says, yeah. He says, I said, I could do it in 10 minutes. That's what I should do it in 10 minutes. I clear the whole thing up for you in 10 minutes. I'm serious. I could do step 3 in 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes. And then we can all go home. And then you can think about what I said in the last 10 minutes. They're doing this new big book now, aren't they? Yeah, they're doing a new big book? What do they call it? What's it called?
Plain English.
The Plain English Big Book. I'm going to give you the Plain English Step 3. I'll tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from. You know, well, anybody who knows me, who've heard me, and you guys have, except for the people who haven't heard me before, know I'm pretty much focused in a certain direction, you know. And to the unfortunate chagrin of some people, I'm pretty much I don't talk about drinking. There's nothing wrong with talking about it. Just because I don't do it, there's nothing wrong with doing it. I lived half my AA life. What did somebody say? Are you sober if you're in a coma? Well, I'll tell you what, if you're sober in a coma, then I spent the first 25 years sober for sure, you know? Because there's no question, for 20 years in AA, I was in a coma. The first step in getting out of jail is knowing you're in jail in the first place. You guys and me spent 5, 10, 15, 20 years, some of you more than that, thinking you didn't have a drinking problem while you were ruining your life, where even to a lot of people around you, 5 years before you drank, they knew you had a drinking problem. People you saw talk to you about it. Why do you drink the way you do? Sometimes judges would talk to you about it. But you didn't know you had a drinking problem. Then one day you woke up, some of you woke up out of the coma, and something happened. Something happened. They call it hitting bottom. I don't know, they say, why all this insistence on hitting bottom? Nobody's going to do this stuff unless they think their life depends upon it. One day you woke up, and something snapped, and you said, I'm going to die unless I stop drinking. You got serious. You got real serious about this thing. And you found yourself in a place that you never thought you'd find yourself, listening to stuff that you didn't want to listen to or you never thought you'd listen to. And all of a sudden, and the only reason you stayed is all of a sudden you stopped drinking. And you couldn't even envision a life without drinking. You've never been able to stop drinking. All of a sudden you're not drinking. And you're in an AA room. And you know what they're talking about? They're talking about not drinking. They're giving all these drunkalogs, which I love. I love drunkalogs. I used to drive each day to my office. It was 45 minutes, and I'd listen to a Clancy tape that he did at Tar Heel Convention in 1980. And then on the way home, every day, I'd listen to the same tape. And I did that for 5 or 6 years. I listened to the same tape every morning going, everywhere coming back. I could do his talk better. And I love listening to circuit speaker talks. You know, Ray O'Keefe, Clancy, you know, all these guys, and Johnny Harris. And it was all about drinking. It wasn't really all about drinking. There was emotional sobriety in there. I mean, and there was God in there, but that's not really what I focused on. I focused on, and then I drank, and then I focused on what it was like, and then what happened. And I didn't focus that much on what it's like now. And I'm a lawyer. I'm a paid bullshit artist. I get paid by the word. And so I can turn a phrase. I love this. There was nothing sinister about it. I loved AA. I loved this program. I read all the books. I did all the stuff. I'm taught as a lawyer to really study stuff and see that stuff and get a lot of knowledge. And I wanted to do service, all for good reasons, really, because I really was grateful. And so I did go around, and I told you I've been doing this thing at this group for close to 40 years, 38 years, something like that, and going up and doing step series and speaking at conventions and all that sort of stuff, and trying to help people and tell them my story. And I got put together a pretty good drunk-a-log, going up to speak in Calgary in a little while and doing their convention. And I guess I may have to give them a drunk-a-log. I don't know, you sort of like required sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't want anybody to draw a conclusion just because I'm talking about what I'm going to talk about. I think there's anything wrong with that. You know, I say it's like a giant toolbox. There's a wrench fit every nut that walks through the door. It's like a giant orchestra. It's like the violin, the string section, and the percussion section, and you know, all this sort of stuff. And so I was in the good old, you know, what it was like, what happened, what it's like, experience, strength, and hope. I was in that deal. And, you know, so I used to do, you know what it is, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes on the drunken, then I drank, and then what happened, and then, you know, 10 minutes or so on what it's like now. And, you know, somewhere, I don't even know where it happened. It definitely happened after 10 years. I got to a point in 10 years where, you know, sometimes they used to say, where I came from, the statement was this, that pop you hear. I don't even know whether they have the same statements in AA now these days.
They do.
They used to have a statement, that pop you hear at 5 years is your head coming out of your ass, you know? Well, listen, for me, the pop happened somewhere around 15, 20 years. I probably had a 5-year pop, and then I had a 10-year pop, and then I had a 15. There's pops going on all over the place. Where all of a sudden you see things that you never saw before, and you hear things and you feel things you never said before. So I can't talk to you now at 76 years of age, with 44 years sobriety. I can't talk to you like I had 3 months. I just can't talk. I wouldn't even know how to do it. And I mean, 90% of this stuff I don't even remember. So I talk like what I got right now. So I'm in some section somewhere. The strings, the percussion, the old fart section, whatever that section is, that's where I am. So that's what I'm going to give you. It's not meant to hurt you. It's just, but this is my experience. I mean, you're entitled to your opinions, just not entitled to your facts. What I'm telling you is the truth. You know, after doing this thing for 44 years and suffering from all the crap you're going to suffer from. The broken hearts, the people that screw you over, the world that's like out of control, the money problems, the sex problems, the romance problems, all that stuff. But I'm going to talk to you about it from maybe a different point of view. Because I've had 40-something years of repeated humiliations and the final crushing of my self-sufficiency, and incredible sponsors and people I've run into. And so I've learned a few things, you know, not a whole lot. And I've unlearned, better than that, I've unlearned a shitload. You know when they say you got to get rid of your old ideas, well, the result was nil, and so you let go absolutely? Let me give you another line. A man can look at something 999 times and look at it for the 1,000th time and see it for the first time. A man or a woman can hear something 999 times over a period of 10, 15, 20 years and hear it the 1,000th time and hear it for the first time. And you may find yourself, if it hasn't happened to you already, one day flipping over the big book and reading a sentence that almost didn't seem important. And all of a sudden, because of what you're going through, it pops up and you see it for the first time. And you know you've read it a million times. You say, where the hell did that come from? And your whole life will change. You see, you're going to get what you get, but you don't see what you don't get. And one of the things that happens is you realize that, yes, we come in here because the first thing getting out of jail is knowing you're in jail. The first thing, we come in here because we can't stop drinking, which is a sort of jail. It's like a bondage. You can't stop. You can't stop drinking. You can't stop thinking about drinking. And we get rid of that. We're excited about that. We join an organization where everybody's talking about not drinking. Everything is about not drinking. They hand you medallions for not drinking. Everything's not drinking. And so, if you're fortunate, somewhere along the way, you realize, and I'm going to say something that's going to sort of like, it may upset you. Don't let it upset you. Just take it the way it is. You're going to discover one day that not drinking is really not important. Now, when I say it's really not important, don't get me wrong, because you're not going to get the real miracles, the real shit, unless you stop drinking. And if you don't get the real shit, the real stuff, you're going to drink again. So obviously drinking is important. But drinking is the first miracle in a sea of miracles that are going to allow you to know something called the new freedom. It's the new freedom. Now you probably feel pretty good about not drinking. That's somewhat of a freedom. But let me tell you something. There's some freedom going on that you may not even know about. But in order to understand that there's freedom going on that you don't even know about, you got to understand how you're not free. You got to understand how you're not free. Because the first step in getting out of jail is knowing you're in jail. And a lot of you guys don't realize you're in jail. And you're in bondage. And you don't even realize it. Because you're not drinking. And you're picking up chips and medallions and good things are happening to you. And maybe sometimes not so good things. But you don't feel you're in jail. But after 5, 10, or 15, or 20 years, you may sort of realize that you're not happy. You're sober 10 years, you're sober 15 years, you're going to meetings, you're sponsoring people. I mean, you're doing relatively okay, but you're just not happy with your sobriety. They talk about it in the big book. They say here and there, once in a while, a former drinker says, I feel better, look better, have a better time. We laugh at such solemn. You know he's going to try the old game again because he's not happy with his sobriety. Soon he'll know loneliness as few do. And you'll be up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking all sorts of bad thoughts about yourself and other people. You'll have all sorts of unhappiness and anxiety visiting you while you're going to meetings and doing all sorts of stuff. And you won't even know how to express yourself because especially one of the bad things that gangs up on you is false pride because once you have 5 or 10 or 15 years and you sponsor people and go to meetings, how do you go to your group and say, you know, I really don't feel like I'm getting it? How do you tell your group when you got 10 years about how crappy you feel you're doing and you don't know what's wrong with you when you're chairing the meeting that night? And so sometimes you have to hit like a second bottom, third bottom, a fifth bottom, a 10th bottom to realize you're in jail and you don't know the answer because you're going to meetings, you're doing the steps, you know, you're an expert at the 4th step and the 5th, all that stuff, and listening to tapes, but there's something missing. Interestingly enough, there's a little bit about my life so you understand where I'm coming from now. Somewhere around at 10 years, I hit bottom. I hit a bottom. That's when you start seeing things like this. I'll give you a perfect example of something I saw in the big book at 10 years. Now you guys are way ahead of me. You're younger and smarter, but I'll tell you something I saw in the big book. And I saw it for the first time. It says, alcohol is but a symptom of our disease. I mean, you can sort of read over this stuff so quick. Alcohol is but a symptom of our disease. Our real disease centers in our mind, not our body. You know, alcohol is but a symptom of our disease. Drinking alcohol is but a symptom of our disease. It's a symptom. It's like when you sneeze, you got a cold. Our real disease centers in our mind, not our body. So somewhere around 10 years or 15 years, you're not drinking alcohol. So you're sober. Well, what the fuck does that mean? No, really, what does that mean? Then you later on, down the road, way down the road, you start realizing that there are people that talk about emotional sobriety. What's the difference between real physical sobriety and emotional sobriety? And you realize that there are people that are physically sober like you, but they seem to be on a different deal. They're working a different program. You're playing golf, and what's that great golfer?
Tiger Woods.
Tiger Woods is playing golf, but you're playing a different game. There are people in A, there's something else going on. They got something else. And you're trying to figure out what they got, like it says in the big book, what they have, this happiness, this thing that's going on. And you realize all of a sudden that's when you start thinking about the insanity, the real disease. But you go to meetings because you're trying to figure out the answer, but nobody's talking about the real disease. Because everybody's talking about not drinking, the newcomer's the most important person in the group, and just don't drink and go to meetings, and you'll be okay, just go to meetings, just sponsor. Nothing ensures, sobriety than intensive work with other alcoholics, which is probably true. Bill Wilson tells a story, and it's true, and it's a story for me. He was, first 18 months, he was in despair, self-pity, couldn't get a job. He'd go down to the hospital. He'd talk to a new man there. He was lifted up on his feet. That happened to me. It's true. It does. It's a tool. But still, the big book itself, oddly enough, even after only 3.5 years, Bill Wilson figured out something. He put it in there. I believe it's divinely inspired. He didn't even understand what he was putting in there. He puts in this. He says, drinking is but a symptom of the disease. What does that mean? That's almost like saying drinking's not the big deal. When you say drinking's, it's almost like saying drinking is not important. Well, we know he doesn't mean that. We know drinking's important. But when he says drinking's but a symptom of the disease, the real disease is in our minds. So that's why I spend a lot of time, all the time, talking about the insanity, the thinking, the driving in a car, the lathering up in the shower, and all of a sudden you hear a voice that says you're an asshole, you ought to kill yourself. And there's nobody in the shower but you, and you're looking around to see who's saying that shit to you, and you're the only one there. And then you realize there's something happening inside of you that's you telling you who you really think you are. You see, all of a sudden you're 10, 15 years sober, and you're still telling yourself you're a piece of shit. Because you got the real disease. Because you're sober, but you got the real disease, and it's going to kill you. Because it centers in your mind, not your body. And you've been focused so much on not drinking and thinking that's the deal, you've missed the real problem, which has caused you all sorts of crap and will probably kill you. But they don't talk about that much in AA. Because we have a one-room schoolhouse, and we got people here with like 6 months or 2 days and 3 days, and they need to hear about don't drink and go to meetings. So I go to about, nowadays in my life, I go to 3, usually every day except for Sundays, 3 meetings a day. Because of Zoom, ever since Zoom. But I was doing that before Zoom. And the meetings I go to for the last 4 or 5 years are meetings where they don't talk about drinking. You may find this hard to believe, but there are many, many, many meetings where all they talk about is drinking. You won't even hear the word God. If you hear it, it'll just come up once or twice in a very sort of thing, in a way that doesn't seem so important. And if somebody talks about it too much, some guy will come up to them and say, you're talking too much about God, you're killing newcomers. And then you'll have like a mixture of meetings where they're talking about God. But there are meetings, you may find this hard to believe, all over the place where all they do is talk about God. And the people are all sober. And they know the steps, they've done the steps, and they got 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And they're from all over. So Giel over there, that guy from, where are you from again? Finland, Denmark? Holland. So he just flew 9 hours to be here, because a lot of people I go to Zoom with, 40, 50, sometimes 90 people at our workshop, are from all over the planet. And George, he also goes to those meetings. So these 2 guys, I see you guys once a week. I see these guys every day. 7 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I see them every day. Along with 50, 60, 90, 100 other people from all over the world. And about 40 or 50 of them are flying in, 9 hours, everything. to be at an event we're doing, and also a picnic the next day, and all sorts of stuff. And all they do is talk about God, 99% of the time. Obviously, if there's a new person have a drink, we'll talk to them. Afterwards, we talk to them about God. And every once in a while, somebody comes up to me and says, either will you be my sponsor, or you can give me some help? And I said, look, here's the meetings I go to. Why don't you hang out there and hang out with those people, because the fellowship of the Spirit that you hang out with is what you'll become. And they'll say this to me: I don't do Zoom. I go to real meetings. So I go to meetings where they'll fly 9 hours to be here with those people. So you got to understand, my focus when I talk is going to be on God. Now, believe me, I have a PhD in our insanity, because I am one, you know? And I can talk about drinking, and I can talk about a drunk log, but I'm going to talk about a faith log. I'm going to talk about faith. Because for those who make it, what is it, 1 in 200 actually makes it? So in this room, maybe 2 people stay sober after 20 years. And Sheldon said he's going to be one of them. And I know I'm one of them, so you guys are pretty much shit out of luck. And that wasn't even a joke. Statistically, you're shit out of luck. You know? But you see, what Zoom has done, but I was going to 3 meetings beforehand, but what Zoom has done is it's opened up a whole new thing where you can go to meetings you want to go to because you like the people that are at the meetings. You don't have to hang out at meetings where people tell you shut up about God. You can go to meetings where you can say anything you want about God. You know, and generally, just like in 1935 or 1936, 37, 38, 39, rarely have seen a person fail, it was thoroughly followed our path. In those meetings, you couldn't get into the meetings unless you got down on your knees and you gave your life to God. That's just a fact. And the first AA meeting was Dr. Bob reading Matthew 5, 6, and 7 from the Holy Bible. And all they did was read from the Holy Bible. So those meetings were pretty much similar to the meetings I go to every single day in Alcoholics Anonymous. So those are the meetings I go to. So the way I am today, and the testimony I give today, and what I talk about today pretty much is what I talk to you guys about. You understand what I'm saying? This is what I talk about. It's not about it. I talk about faith. I talk about that part of the book where it says we never apologize for God or talking about God. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through our testimony and what we tell people, what he's done for us once we begin to outgrow fear. I talk about the other bondage. I talk about the other bondage, outgrowing fear. I talk about being free to hang out with who you want to hang out with, you know, free to be who you want to be, free to worship who you want to worship, free to talk about it, you know what I mean? And not having that insidious, horrible dis-ease inside where you're so worried about what other people think about you, that you're always judging yourself and saying, I can't talk, what do they think about this, what do they think about that, why did I say this, why did I say that, well, they must think I'm stupid. I talk about the other disease. The disease of needing to be accepted by people, and the real disease of alcoholism, the absolute deep-seated knowledge that you're totally insufficient and worthless. And since you are worthless and not worth crap, now listen, I want you to know something. As an alcoholic, you don't know this. I'm telling you a secret that most alcoholics don't know. I mean, you know it, but you really don't know it. Because you have a voice, and it's a lying voice, and it says, I don't give a crap what anybody thinks about me. That's a lie. That's something you tell yourself. Usually after you've been telling yourself you're a piece of shit for 20 years, you're worrying about what other people think about you, you're going to think about you, then you type in and you say, I don't give a crap what they think about me. You tell other people, I don't give a crap what they think. And you have this little voice inside of you that helps you deny. You talk about denial. You think the booze is denial? It's the denial of the fact that you hate yourself. So when you hate yourself, that makes you uncomfortable wherever you are in your life, at parties, wherever you are uncomfortable. You are nervous. And so you're looking for some way not to feel uncomfortable. And I lump it into like 2 or 3 major categories. The first category is you feel uncomfortable because if you can somehow get people to like you or love you or get the approval of people. So number one, you tend to hang out with people that make you feel comfortable because, for whatever reason, and you tend to whore yourself out to the world, and you tend to look for, you ready for this? You look for romance and sex. Because if you can have sex with what you chase, because you chase yourself and who you are and what you are for a man in the eyes of a woman. And for a woman, you chase your comfortability and who you are in the eyes of a man. So if you have a good-looking gal and you're in love and all that sort of stuff, you feel good about yourself. And if you don't have that going, you feel like a piece of crap. And you have a good-looking guy, you're married, you feel good about yourself, you don't have that going, you feel like a piece of crap. And so you chase all over the planet acceptance from other people. And let me tell you something. It's an addiction that's 20,000 times worse and hard to even understand than alcohol. And here's the real problem. You had it before you started drinking, and it goes on for 20, 30, 40 years after you stop drinking. It's that fear of people and economic insecurity. And so that's why you chase the money, the property, the prestige, and the romance. And they don't even talk about that crap, that other bondage that you're actually suffering, you're all suffering from right now. They don't even talk about that stuff until the 6th step. Until step 6, which most people don't know or don't understand. They don't even talk about that crap. And so you're chasing the money, and the money is the material stuff. So then you're chasing the things of this world, everything in this world, the money, the job, the vanity stuff. There's a great book in the Bible called Ecclesiastes, written by a real whack job, King David, who was after God's own heart, and then he screwed another guy's wife and he had him killed. He was crazy like we were. You know what I mean? And he wrote the Psalms and all that other stuff. And the first part of Ecclesiastes says, this is what it says, no, actually it's written by Solomon, I'm sorry. It says vanity, which was his kid. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. The second thing is anything that has to do with vanity. How do I look? How much do I weigh? Am I handsome? Am I gorgeous? The material woman. How much money do I have in the bank? What's my car like? That's what you're thinking about. You're thinking about the scale, the bucks, the money, and that's another incredibly horrible addiction. That's why they lump them together. One of the promises, you'll lose fear of people and economic insecurity. And they're linked. One day something went really bad in this country about 20 years ago, and the mortgage crisis, and my house was being foreclosed on. I didn't worry so much about being homeless. I worried about what people would think if they knew my house was foreclosed on. You understand? I worried about what people would think if they knew I lost my job, if they knew how much money I had, or if they knew I was broke. That's a bondage. That's as bad as. And then there's the third thing. And you know something? You can have both things going on at the same time. Sober. Going on, and you usually do. And sometimes for the first 10 or 15, 20 years, you don't even know you got it. It may occur to you at some point in time when you're complaining once again about the money or the boyfriend or the girlfriend or the car, whatever the hell you complain about, that your life seems to be screwed up in areas that has to do with that stuff. It may occur to you, you might say, when is this shit going to go away? When am I going to stop? Well, I'm 20 years sober and I'm still worried about the money. I'm still worried about the girlfriend, the boyfriend, the this and that, and I'm alone. When is this stuff going to go away? And all you do is think about it. And the more you think about it, the more crappy you feel about yourself and other people. And the more depressed you get. And you're not being rocked in the fourth dimension of existence at all. And somehow you have to sort of hit bottom on that deal and realize that you're in jail. You're in just as much bondage. And you want something? Guess what? If you don't take care of that stuff, you know what really works sometimes? Scotch. But it's like a temporary fix, let me tell you something. And that's why people drink. That's why you're drinking in the first place. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a biological thing, because we're a little different. Because, when I drink, not only doesn't satisfy me, I just got to keep on drinking and keep on drinking because it doesn't satisfy me. I got to keep it up because my kidneys screw the whole thing. My kidneys and liver screw the whole thing up, and I start getting sober again. My problem wasn't drinking; it was getting sober. If I could have just stayed drunk, in a coma, I would have been okay. So here's the deal. You got the alcohol thing licked, or you think you have it licked. But what about the real disease? The real disease that centers in your mind, not your body. And what's even worse than that, they sort of hint around in the big book, because they don't want to get you all nervous and anything, that God has something to do with this. There's all sorts of paragraphs of that in the big book. But then Bill Wilson says this in the big book. God came, I had him, he fixed me, I asked him to come and he needed me and all sorts of stuff, but soon his presence was blotted out by, what was blotted out by? The shit. The worldly clamors. In other words, the stuff that is your real disease kills the God thing. So you don't have a shot. Because this world and the things in this world kill the God thing. So, I know they're writing this new big book. That's going to clear everything up for you. It's called like the plain English something. What is it called?
Plain
I'm going to give you the third step. The plain language,
third step.
Easy to understand third step.
Layman's third step.
Too many words. Too many words. It's confusing to alcoholics. As you understand him, we can get rid of that. You know why we can get rid of that? I know alcoholics love that, but it's confusing. And I'll tell you why it's confusing. I believe in Jesus Christ. Do you understand? I'm a Christian. I'm a Jewish Christian. Now, you don't have to clap. I'm not doing it. But I want to tell you something. If I say I believe in Jesus, this is what you understand. It's Jesus as I understand him. If you're a Jew and you believe in God, it's God as you understand him. If you're a Muslim, you believe in Allah, it's Allah as you understand. It's always as you understand them. You don't need to have as you understand them in there. That's Bill Wilson's apology to the world because he's worried what other people will think about him. That's why he wrote Appendix 2. Don't be pissed off at me, you know what I mean? And what's this? Give your will. Give your will. Too many words. Here's the third step. I'm gonna tell you what the third step really is. Make a decision to give your life to God. Did you understand that? Make a decision to give your life to God. That sort of clears things up, doesn't it?
Done.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Your will's included in that. Everything else is included in that. You know what that means? Every desire you have, forget about it. You're giving it to God. Every lust you have, every want you have, everything you want in your life, it's not yours anymore. You forfeit your life to God. You give them to God. All the sex, all the money, everything in the world, just give it to God. That's the third step. By the way, that is the third step. Now, you don't know that's the third step because they got all that other shit in there. As you understand them and the will, and so you can discuss all that, what's your will and what you understand it, but that's what it is. You give your life to God. You give your life, you give everything to God. You know, the world is not important to you. You have a new employer. You're only here to do his work. When you wake up in the morning, you ask God, direct my thinking towards you. Make him the center. You know, you want to be rocking in the fourth dimension. You want to know that here's what you have to do. You got to do the great fact. Make him the central fact of your life and become convinced that he lives in your heart and mind in a way which is indeed miraculous. Burn that into the mind of every newcomer. Burn it into the mind of every newcomer. Don't worry about us. Forget about us. Your real reliance must be on God. He will even show you how to create the fellowship you crave. God will tell you, forget about who you want to hang out with. Forget about it. That's your will. Your only concern is who does God want you to hang out with. You know the old day joke, you know, if you hang around the barber shop long enough, you can get a haircut. You hang around the bar, like, stay away from sleepy people. You only hang around people that talk about God. You know, it all depends upon your relation with God. You hang out with, so you'll meet some of us in the fellowship of the Spirit.
Amen.
The fellowship of people who have given their life to God, and God's the most important thing. You can tell who they are. You know why? They talk about him without shame at an AA meeting. You know, because all men of faith have courage. They trust their God, and people have courage to talk about him. They really don't care what you think about him. When you walk out of the room because you get mad at them, they're happy because they know they've done something that beats the shit out of you, and it's hit a nerve. And all through the book, all through the big book, and the 12 and 12, all they do. Oh, by the way, this isn't my opinion. 90% of stuff I just quoted from you comes from our literature. Except they have too many words. Too many words. Too many words. You know what Dr. Bob said his last words to Bill Wilson was? He said, let's not screw this thing up, keep it simple. Too many words. Clog up the real meaning. Here's the deal. Now, I'm just giving you this crap because this is where I'm at in my life, and this is what I realized, and this is what changed my life. Because I started realizing the AA jokes are great. Having fun is great. We have fun. But the bottom line is when you strip away the alky dog and you strip away the $10 cruise and you strip away all the funny stuff and the sarcasm and everything, what the big book is you're a royal priesthood. Your whole life is God's now. You've sacrificed your life. You've forfeited your life. Your life and your wants and your desires are not important at all. What is your problem? Your girlfriend, your boyfriend, what does that have to do with God? Your money, what does that have to do with God? None of it is important to give your life to God. So now, what is the point there? So here's the point is this. The point is this. Then you get to the sixth step, now it starts making sense. Because this is a step that separates the men from the boys, the women from the girls, the grown-ups from the children. And how does it separate them? Because the people who are actually doing the sixth step, according to the sixth step, are those who are trying to grow their image and likeness into the image and likeness of God. They're just trying to get more and more and more God in them. You know, at some point in time, you get so much of this stuff in. Now, we never get perfect. Just believe me, I'm not talking from a seat of perfection or anything like that. I've still got a lot of... Hey, listen. You know me. I'm cursing all the time. I'm saying the F-bomb and everything like that. That's not, I don't know if that's godly or not, you know. I like the Apostle Paul. I become all things by using any means possible to bring some people to God. Whether it's good or bad, I don't call myself out as perfect, but I know one thing. I know what this book is about. I know what the 12 and 12 is about, and it's not about not drinking. It is about not drinking. But I know what it's really about. I know what the bondage is. I know why people do drink. I know why people aren't happy with their sobriety. I know that when people don't give up, don't realize what I'm talking about, and even with this talk, you may walk out, yeah, look, I got down on my knees. I said the third step prayer, and I was as sincere as a heart attack, just like Bill Wilson was sincere. And you know what it says in the big book? We have now completed step 3. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to God. And then I got up and I checked my bank account. And I called up my girlfriend. And I got in my new car. You know, you get it? And then I devoted the next 10 years of my life to managing my life so I could have everything I wanted. So the truth is, when did I do the third step? Well, technically, according to AA, I guess at like 10 months or something like that when I got on my knees. Maybe when I had 25 years. Maybe I'm still doing it. You know, every time I start worrying about the worldly clamors and thinking of that, maybe I haven't done the third step. Maybe I made a decision, but maybe it's just gotten stronger and stronger. Listen, here's the deal. Here's what I found out. To the extent that you actually turn your life over to God, it's just to that extent that you will be free of worrying about what people think about you. To the extent that you turn your life over to God and focus on God, you'll stop worrying about what your shoes are, what pants you're wearing, whether you have a Rolex watch. I got that a long time ago. You stop worrying about the watch. You stop worrying about the shirt. Stop worrying about the car. You stop worrying about the money. Does anybody do it perfectly? No, but I'll tell you what, it can get pretty good. You'll have a new purpose in life. You don't worry about a bucket list. What haven't I done? What have I done? Taking a cruise, moving. I wish if I only lived in California, I'd be okay. If I only had this boyfriend, if only I'd had this happen to be okay. And then you move there and you find out it's all bullshit. It didn't make you okay. Running around the planet, boy, that's a sad thing. You start running out. Let me tell you something. You start running around out of runway when you get around 70 years old. Not too many things you can run around to keep on trying. You better figure out what the hell is wrong with you right here, right now, where you're sitting. Because it ain't going to be better in Milwaukee. Because you're there. You know what I mean? You're crazy in Miami, you're going to be just as crazy in Milwaukee. Because you brought your brain there. Never understanding what this thing was all about. Because it had all these other words in it. Like as you understand them and will and the like. Yeah, just give your life to God. Be a God person. That's what the big book is all about in every page of the big book. It's about that. So why? So yeah, ask yourself this, and then we'll close up. If what I said is true, listen, I'll tell you what you do. Read the big book yourself. Look at every place I talk about Him or God or all that sort of stuff. People. How about this one? Every once in a while, an alcoholic say that he can't get sober unless he has his wife back, his family life. He says, nonsense, bullshit. You advise him, let him know that you can get sober. All he needs is to trust God and clean house. Trust God. It's all about God. So here's the problem. Here's the question. If everything I'm saying is true, I'm pretty sure it is. And there's a lot of stuff in the big book that I haven't said. And in 12 and 12, if it's all true, then how come you're saying to yourself, man, I never hear this shit talked about like this in the book, in the rooms I go to? How come this isn't talked about in AA? Well, how many people are actually sober in AA? How many people do you think are sober in AA? The old timers I hang out with, when they said that guy's sober, they meant something more than just not drinking. Not drinking was not enough. You just had enough. Not drinking was just enough to get you drinking again. Really. Now you ought to ask yourself, well, how come if all that stuff Russell's saying is true, and I'm not the only one talking about it, you know what I mean? How come I'm not listening to that? It says, what it says in the big one? It says, God will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. Because of our bondage, because of what it says in the big book in chapter of the agnostics. Mere code of morals, better philosophy of life would have helped us to be sober a long time ago. Therefore, we have to talk about God to find a fellowship, find the power by which we could live. And here's the problem with agnostics. It bothers them. It makes them uncomfortable. They don't want to talk about God because you know why? Because they're not constitutionally capable of being honest with themselves. You know why? Because they don't mind giving up the alcohol, but they don't want to give up their way of life or thinking. They'll sort of nod and say, yeah, it's the worldly clamors. They'll understand all that. They'll say it's true, but they're still whores. They're still whores. I wasn't joking, by the way. It's funny. It's funny in a weird sort of way. We're still whores for the world, aren't we? You know? I mean, this anything is good, but, money, it's not important. It's just right up there with oxygen. That's easy for you to say, Russell, right? But what if I'm right?
You are right.
What if I'm right? What if the big book does say that? What happens if the plain language... Let me tell you something. Trust me. Whatever plain frickin' language they're thinking up in the big book, it ain't going to be the shit I'm talking about. You know why? Because they're more interested in volume. Getting people in. And people not disliking them. And there's probably good... Listen, I'm not putting this down. I think this is great. We bring them all in. The crazies, the nuts, they all get attracted. And then every once in a while, once every 60 meetings, maybe a guy like me comes in and gives them the truth. And they can walk out and say, that guy was full of shit. Who the hell invited him? And 3 guys can walk out and everything like that. But that's how we get them all. That's how we get them all in. Selling them this. We do a bait and switch. Come on in. You won't drink. Your life will be wonderful. You're going to be great and everything like that. And they start dropping like flies. And every once in a while, somebody comes in and says something. You catch it. You know what I mean? You catch the deal. So that's my third step. Thank you.